Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I have a very esteemed panel with me, so what I'll do is I'll just get them started as far as their personal intros and bios are concerned. They'll give a quick snap of what they are into, what their specialities are, and so how do we start? We start with Setya. Yeah. So I have two Sanjeev, so I'll call one of them as Setya and the other as Suri.
Hi, good afternoon everyone. My name is Sanjeev Setya. I'm currently working with Shriram Snacks as a their supply chain. Prior to this, I have experience working with Mondelez and Hans in the past. Overall, I have about 25 years of experience in all facets of supply. Thank you. Happy to be a part of this panel and group.
Hello everyone, I'm Rajesh. I'm having 30 years plus experience in supply chain and procurement. Hello everyone, I'm Rajesh. I'm having 30 plus years of experience in supply chain and procurement. I've worked in the organizations like Kodak, Schneider Electric, Ingersoll Rand, Everett Dennison, Baxter. So my last 15 years have been into pharmaceutical organizations, and I've been taking care of end-to-end supply chain. Nice to be part of this.
Welcome, Rajesh.
Good afternoon, everyone. Abhishek, Joshi. I've got 20 years of experience in supply chain and operations practice. Previous stints include with Accenture Strategy and Consulting with Nicoble. I've also traversed on the logistics side of it. I was part of the Deutsche Post, DHL, and AP Monomers. Presently, I'm working closely with Government of India on a strategic initiative promoted by Tata Trust, where we are working closely with. It's a G2G initiative. Implementing the flagship scheme of Honorable Prime Minister of creating 10,000 rural agribusiness enterprises. So I'm currently leading that effort, both in terms of incubation and its implementation. Thank you.
Hi, I am Sanjeev Suri, and I am from Amway, India. I am taking care of the last mile experience for Amway, which includes the distribution, delivery, and the customer services. So prior to Amway, I have been part of Flipkart. So where I get the large warehousing as well as the line haul for large category items. And before that I have been in different industries, Samsung, etc. So moved around the industries and now happy to be part of this platform. Thank you.
Welcome, Suri. So, ladies and gentlemen, what I'll do is I'll just share the context and how we are going to go about it. So, we are going to have all four of my esteemed panelists speak on certain issues which I'll kind of post to them. They'll take a few minutes to explain those issues, come out with their thoughts. You could keep a tab of what you want to ask of them, or me for that matter, towards the end. So we'll have a 10 minutes Q&A towards the end, just to get you into the mainstream, so to say, as far as this panel discussion is concerned. But we'll try and make sure that none of you feels a bit jagged, or, I mean, we'll keep it interesting for that matter. We'll kind of make sure that you kind of relate to what my co-panelists have to say. They'll come up with some kind of live examples. So the topic as such is intelligent supply chains to meet new challenges. And new challenges are a way of life in supply chain. But the key challenges, as we come across, I guess most of us are supply chain professionals, so the key challenges that we face on a day-to-day basis are, number one, I'll put it as variability. I guess most of you will relate to the variability that happens to our supply chains on a regular day in, day out, if not an hourly basis. Then we have something called unpredictability, which we have to live with. So this is challenge number one. And see, the customer is king. All of us are customers, discerning customers. We want the best from whatever we deal with. For example, when we go to a mall, we want the best service. When we send a car for service, we want the best of service. We want real-time information. If an Uber or Ola does not keep you updated about its whereabouts, you kind of feel lost. So the expectations have become, I mean, we all have created those expectations, and it is because of the expectations that the load or the demand from the supply chains have increased manifold over the past few years, so to say. everyone talks about the single digit delivery or the 10 minutes delivery, so which has created a paradigm kind of a shift in the way supply chains are managed. I mean, who could have thought that if Mr. Suri or Mr. Setia has just logged into the website and he orders maybe 5 minutes hence, and 10 minutes hence is when the material actually hits his gate. So that's the kind of paradigm shift which has happened, and it's happened because companies are playing with a lot of data, a lot of information, making it logical. So the moment, say, Rajesh logs in, they already know what Rajesh is going to order. So they start assembly or collating those kind of tidbits, and the moment he is finished with the order, they've actually almost packed the material and it's ready for shipment. So that's the kind of data that's being used. AI is being built around it so as to serve the customer as per his expectation or to delight the customer. So customer delight has to become a way of life as far as we supply chain professionals are concerned. So the approach, as I would point it, or I have already pointed and I have stated it at few of the sessions like these, is the 3C approach. What does 3C mean? Connect, communicate and collaborate. Now what we are trying to achieve is this kind of a single minute or 10-minute delivery can only happen when we have communicated and collaborated across the supply chain. So first is to connect, then share information, and once you have started sharing information, then you get into collaboration mode. So connect, communicate and collaborate is the 3C approach that is being used, and it's going to become a way of life. So with those thoughts, maybe I'll come to the first speaker so that he can also share his views on this. So coming to Suri, which is Sanjeev Suri, what according to you are the key challenges being faced in the supply chain or by the supply chain managers? While I have stated a few, you are free to elaborate.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Thanks, Mohit. I think you have covered most of the challenges. So the point which I was going to talk, I think many of them already covered. So thanks for it. What I will say for the supply chain people, all of us, I think we are expert in converting the challenges into opportunities. I think we all have faced, and the major challenge which I talk about is the macro level, which happened like COVID. So
can you have a big round for the statement that you made that we supply chain managers make challenges into opportunities? I mean, convert challenges into opportunities. Absolutely, sir.
So, continuing with what I was talking about, I think we all have seen what happened in COVID, where, if I talk about myself, because I give you more example, the complete operation stopped on 24th of March 2020 when the lockdown happened. And at that time when the business stopped, before that time, so always when I talk about pre-COVID and post-COVID. So pre-COVID, supply chain professionals were not, we were there but we were not so important in the company. But that was time when the company understood, all the companies I think in the country, that supply chain is a business critical entity. It's not something which is not, which is to be there, but there is something which helps the business to enable. It is not, if it is not there, we are not doing it. So in the same context, we had to be ready to mitigate. So risk mitigation is one of the biggest challenges. So how do we face it? How do we are we ready for it? Some of the challenges we may not have, we cannot visualize. But do we have the right team? Do we have the right processes? And do we have the right attitude to handle that? I think that is the first major challenge which I feel that we all have to be ready. We will be seeing more such challenges coming down. So suddenly we had a Ukraine war, the shipping lines getting impacted. So we have to be ready for that. So that is the first thing which I feel. Second, I think we all have heard Mr. Sandhu talking about automation. And automation is something which is the buzzword. So how do we ensure that automation and technology delivers for our customers? But today our customer is getting an experience very different from what he was getting 10 years back. So today they are talking about not same day delivery, they are talking about customer expecting 10 hours, 10-minute delivery. So my son, he wants to have a popcorn or a wafer tonight. So he orders and he gets it 10 minutes. So this is something which 5 years back also we could not even visualize. So are we ready to enable that? So I think using technology, automation, when we are talking about to deliver to the customers, I think is the other major area. And along with this, meeting and exceeding customer expectations, that what type of keeping one step ahead, but not forgetting the cost. Because customer can, again, coming back to the same example of 10-minute delivery, we can do it, but is it something which we want to do it? So that's a point which we all have to understand, because we are all business people and we have to keep the COI in mind. So is it something which we want to offer, and at what stage and what cost? So I think these are the few challenges I think we need to keep in mind. Thank you.
Bang on, Sanjeev. In fact, you spoke about cost versus the optimization of cost effectiveness is what matters a lot, and he spoke about using digitization and in an indirect kind of way. So he mentioned about the data management, which the gentleman in the morning spoke about. And so the next poser that I'm going to have is for Rajesh. So as far as we feel, digitization can help to add immense value to the organization, but at the same time, there are challenges. So I would request you to share some of the challenges and the examples of how you've gone about digitizing and how it can add a lot of value to the supply chain. That's what my question to Rajesh is.
Okay, so in terms of importance of digitalization, to make sure that how it is adding value to overall organizations. Few aspects. Number one, which is very clear, is in terms of cost. Every organization is looking at the cost aspect, and the objective is to really reduce cost. Improve the speed to the market is another aspect. Every organization is really looking at the speed to the market, how fast you are delivering your products to the market, and then this implementation, the entire implementation of digitalization from upstream to downstream. So from upstream perspective, I was part of implementation of improving the speeds to reach our suppliers in terms of implementation of SAP Ariba, from very simple models of sending the PO, getting the purchase order from and then working on those purchase orders. The vendors were making sure that the entire upstream supply chain gets strengthened by implementing this implementation of SAP Ariba, and from the downstream supply chain, from planning perspective.
So just to put things in perspective, what you are saying is you have automated the upstream supply chain so as to make it man-free or more technology-driven. Is that the point?
The time we are able to reduce the lead time, we are more efficient in terms of asking from the vendor what is required, and in terms of their turnaround times to deliver the products to our clients are much faster.
So building in intelligence so as to, make sure that the downward supply chain gets triggered by the, things coming from the upward supply chain. That's your point.
Yeah.
Could you give a few examples just to make it more relatable to the audience?
Yeah. For example, we are able to reduce the tag by 20% in terms of sending the purchase order, acknowledgement of the purchase order, dispatch of the products, and then finally receiving the products to the plant, meeting the GRN. So we are able to reduce the overall tag by implementation of these modules, the implementation of SAP Ariba in the upstream supply chain. And similarly for the downstream supply chain, from the planning perspective, we implemented some of the aspects like how to forecast using data and technology. Is the forecast very close to the market or not? And what are the constraints? And then getting those information from the system, using that information in SNOP meeting to get the right kind of indication what is going to happen. And then working on the working capitals part, and then ensuring that how this product comes through the supply chain to the customers, and making sure that those informations and using the optimum transporters, ensuring that the products are available on time, and there have been technology involved in that also. Before, for example, when we move the product to Karnataka, we are telling the customer well in advance whether the product is coming on time or there will be delay. And if there will be delay, what kind of delay it will have.
So basically, dousing the customer anxiety in case anxiety starts building up. So they did something which was to give a real-time update to the customer as to whether things are going to happen on time, before time, late, so as to help the customer get a feel of how things are going to pan out. So that's the kind of communication seamlessness that is required in our supply chain, the end-to-end transparency, that's what he's kind of spoken about. Now, he also spoke about operational excellence through integrated planning and excellence, or integrated planning and execution. So that's what my poser to Setia is going to be, as to how do companies go about doing it, and what is your take on how to go about doing it?
Sure, thank you so much, Mohit, for this. And this is just linking what Sanjeev talked about and what Rajesh talked about. So if you look at managing availability, I mean that has never been easy. And given the fact that we had pandemic and now the Ukraine war, so these have been posing further challenges for us. And synchronizing supply chain demand and supply, it has never been easy. But if you look at, there have been various tools which have been helping us doing this. But what today I will talk about is the integrated business planning, which is more of a process, not a tool. And it is such a powerful process which can kind of become the nerve center for the entire organization in terms of the way business happens today. The key differentiator of this, if you compare it with any other system or tool, is number one, it has the full business. So it not only talks about balancing demand and supply, it talks about managing revenue, managing portfolio, managing your product life cycle, managing capex, managing new capacities which have to come in. So it takes the full business view of the entire things for us. Number two differentiator is it manages the risk. So what it will try and do is it will help you with scenario planning. So we are not very sure how much, say for example, we are forecasting. How much of the forecast will become a reality for us? We are not very sure about that. What will be the supply variability? Will there be a breakdown in the plan? What are the other challenges which you might face? For example, any new thing which can disrupt the demand or the consumptions for us. So these are various variables, some of them known, some of them unknown, which can impact the entire value chain for us. So what this process does is, this does a scenario-wise planning in terms of what happens in scenario A, in scenario B, scenario C, and basis that we can definitely work out what are the various risks and opportunities, and then how do we mitigate those risks if they flow in for us. The third differentiator is in terms of how does this pan it back to the, in terms of the revenue for the organization. So thus it links the volume-based planning for us into the financials. So this ensures that it covers end-to-end things for us. So hence if you look at a mature IBP process, what that will do is, that will bring in collaboration, which we talked about, that will bring in transparency into the entire supply chain for us, that will bring up the service levels, that will bring down the inventory levels, improve the efficiencies in the entire value chain for us.
While lunch is still a bit away, could you give us some examples from where you work, Haldiram for that matter?
So in Haldiram, so we are trying to get this process engraved into our ways of working. So we are planning to have a statistical forecast which takes input from various stakeholders, so that it is an amalgamation of both statistical forecast and the bottom-up forecasting for us. Then doing supply checks and the rough cut capacity plannings for us. Scheduling the lines to ensure that we're able to match these demands for us, and ensuring that the deployment happens, which is again based on the scientific inventory norms which we built for the super stockists.
So as I can see, a lot of science and algorithms are coming into play as far as managing supply chains are concerned. And for that, you need a lot of data. So I guess they are working on a lot of data which is being churned out in such a fashion so that the algorithms predict what's going to happen. And it happens to be almost a 2 sigma kind of a thing, wherein 95% of the time the algorithms kind of give them the correct signal, which leads to a higher service level as we spoke about. So that's the way supply chains are kind of evolving. Now one more thing which has happened over the past, as we all know, the black swan event of COVID happened, then the Ukraine war, all of a sudden out of the blue happened, and this kind of threw supply chains into a quandary. So my next question to Abhishek would be, I mean, post these black swan events and the sudden surprise which came by the Ukraine war, how do we see the supply chains shaping up post these scenarios, and what is the inventory model going to be going forward? Is it going to be a conservative model where you're going to hold a lot of stocks? Is it going to be some kind of an end-to-end collaboration? What are your views on this?
Thank you, Mohit. I think I'll draw upon all the co-panelists' observations inside of it. So I think the jury is still out. Let's be very blankly looking at it. I think the inventory model, no one has got a pulse on it. 6 years back, we probably had a competitive benchmarking in terms of what my industry peers are doing, how my inventory gyrations are happening. I was able to at least in some way align my seemingly processes right from my manufacturing to my order fulfillment processes and look at my inventories, as a cut short of it, regardless of whatever channels I'm serving on demo. Right now, post COVID, I think there with the kind of a massive disruption which is happening, I think the inventory has gone, kind of a metamorphosis, I say. We have been all following the lean manufacturing policy where it was just in time, and that has given away to speed. We were looking at, connecting and disconnecting nodes, so there was a linearity in supply chain, but now we are looking at and addressing component networks, right? So that has evolved in terms of looking at whether I'm being agile in terms of, adapting to what kind of changes my supply chain is getting and build up my responsiveness around it. And third factor is essentially around what kind of inventory strategies do I carry. Now, purely from a manufacturing and process side, that Sanjeev also mentioned, right? Building up an IPP or a decision support system, you probably are increasing the visibility of those black holes, which was you were pretty much unfamiliar with, right? So increasing visibility probably is helping you in redefining what your inventory strategy should be. Second is the just in case. One is not even sure in this VUCA world as in terms of what uncertainty will probably there. There are disconnected control networks like I mentioned. How do you, which one of them can you best guess, estimate and try and build up that portion inside of it. So inventories for an organization standpoint to conclude is now divergent upon organization to organization, right? They are revamping, reimagining things, supply chains. They're looking at whether a consolidation of inventory will possibly help them, but even the consolidation of inventory in certain area, but possibly also flip that. You never know whether you'll have access to that inventory in case of any uncertainty or any change which happens, both geopolitically as well as purely from a supply chain disruption standpoint. So to answer the question, I think organizations post-COVID are still looking at what kind of inventories they need to carry, whether it needs to be scattered, it needs to be consolidated at one point in time, how they would react to each of those multi-channel configurations. E-com boomed up because of the lockdowns. We got quick response, order fulfillment initiatives which were taken up. So I think, to my mind, personally, as a view is that organizations are still trying to, carry on what the traditionalist core was of inventory strategies, but are also kind of leveraging and structuring it accordingly to see as to how, they can reach out to the customers.
Okay. But don't you feel that, inventory being a necessary evil, there was a lot of focus on reducing inventories across the board.
Right.
But post-COVID, there has been a realization that inventory is actually not that bad. What's your take on that?
Yeah, inventory was never bad. I think it was just
from a supply chain perspective, never bad. But from a management point of view, it was like, why are holding so much of inventory? So
I'll qualify that. Purely from a supply chain guy or a supply chain manager's perspective, in fact, inventory was a subjectivity of my turnaround time. How could I rapidly increase my throughput and ensure that the inventory is actually being targeted to what my customer demand fulfillment initiative is all about. But like I said, inventories are bulging up in certain cases. If you look at the manufacturers, I can distinctly bring out an example when the semiconductor chip shortages happened. There was a there was a sole source supplier, there was a single source supplier, there was a strategic sourcing initiative which has happened in the predominant countries which are manufacturing it. and there was a scramble in terms of getting up the first lot picked up because everything was on board, right? How did that? So the suppliers, they created immediately, sensing the problem, and this happened way into the first phase of COVID, where they were able to put together a dashboard, not only looking at the suppliers, but also looking at the tier 2, tier 3 suppliers also, and predicting their inventory and putting together a dashboard of what their visibility is. The organizations were in that case were able to handhold and support as to what level of inventories they can possibly manage for themselves. So increasing visibility, reducing the volatility of that inventory, reducing the stockout situations, looking at what the speed of the demand which emerged, which was again, like you mentioned, Mohit, it was a black swan moment, so there were stockouts, there were goods not able to reach in time. So I think there was a mix and match of all those strategies. Going forward, I think we are still in the process of settling down. And if I have to take a nostalgic view, I think 3 years down the line, we'll probably be back to the same sequence of what we are. But the model certainly will not be the same as what we have been accustomed to in terms of operating animations.
So as you can see, we have 100+ years of experience, and that's kind of coming out by way of the dialogues that are happening. So my next exposure to Sanjeev Suri will be that while we all know that an integrated business can help achieve customer delight, but in trying to do so, what are the challenges of integrating a supply chain end to end? Over to you, sir.
Thanks, Mohit. I think what we are talking about and which we have a punchline at our end is how do we integrate the complete supply chain to enhance the customer experience with cost focus. So that's the basic punchline we work on. That we can, how do we use technology for integrating the whole operations and ensuring that the customer experience is something which he is expecting and we can deliver, but keeping the cost in focus. So that's the basic punchline which we are working on. Now towards that end, what we have been working on is, I give you examples that how do we integrate and how do we manage the overall operations to meet the customer requirements. There were times when the customer used to call our call centers, that what happened to my order and where is it and has it delivered and it's moving or not. So what we did, we said, okay, this is something which is need and we don't want him to call and we need to inform him. So how do we do it? We went for a startup and we tied up with them, and now the complete messaging is available through message and SMS, but they have the experience of Amazon Flipkart. So that is something which we and I think many of the companies today are following it, where we are able to integrate the back end in the front end, this is customer gets experience. Second, when we are talking about the planning in our all the warehouses or the plant or the raw material, I think that is all integrated by use of the basic technologies in terms of the different companies in different ways. So that's what important, whether we are using a SAP model or ERP or whichever company we are going for, but that helps us to integrate and deliver. One more thing which we have been able to do at our end is in terms of the warehouses that we talk about. So earlier, some companies and some warehouses were not Wi-Fi enabled. They were not having the WMS also. So what used to happen? The picker packers, they have to move around to pick up the material. They were not able to trace where it is kept. So we integrated. We went for a WMS, and that WMS is something which helps on the ground, because it's good to hear that the various payment system. What happens is it enables the picker packer to keep in the right location and to pick from the right location. So that increases efficiency, that increases speed, and in addition to all of that, it results into the cost efficiency for the company. Along with meeting the timelines of the deliveries as well as the cost efficiency. I think that is what we have been able to work on.
Right. So that, ladies and gentlemen, was an example from Amway. So he's from Amway, and I was just picking his brains as to how they are selling and what are their channels. So could you just elaborate as to how you are reaching out to your customers?
Amway, what we are basically a direct selling company. So we have distributors and they have their customers also. So they use for own consumption as well as they deliver to customers. Now, when I was talking pre-COVID, so our 30% sales used to we have our website. So people used to order on the website, but that was not 30%. Plus we had a lot of shops where our distributor customer used to go and they used to buy. So 30% online, 70% offline. COVID happened, it went to 100%, and now it is stabilized where 70% of our sale is happening online. So people are happy. They say if I'm able to get, like the matrix says, next day today I order and next day I get it. So why should I go to a shop all the way, let's say a shop in Satna? So why should somebody go from all the district, travel to a shop and buy it when he can sitting at home, he can order, he can get delivered the next day. So we have been able to enhance the speed as well we have been able to enhance the reach. So these are two areas which we have focused on and we have been able to deliver. And I think that's working very well for us. So what happens is we are reinvesting our money from the shop model. Some shops are already there, but they are more for experience. But we want customer to buy online more. So we are reinvesting. We are investing into the technology. We are investing into the website. We have gone for major reputation. So that's the direction which we are going on. Thank you.
So when you have a vast network and number of SKUs is also huge, so that leads to the complexity of how do you optimize the network and the inventory and the SKUs and all those things put together. So I guess digitization can be one solution for this. So I'll request Rajesh to share his views on that and also share the barriers that companies typically face in this digitization journey. So just to put the question once again as to how I want it to be addressed is network and inventory optimization using digitization as a tool and the barriers being faced to achieve that.
So, question to it, what is
Can we have someone to fix it? Fine.
Okay, two questions. One is very clearly on network optimization, inventory optimization, and second is on the barriers on our journey to digitalization. So in terms of network optimizations, I'll start with one example. One of the organizations was having 25 depots across India where I worked for. And then the question was, are we really efficient with 25 locations? This was post-GST. The objective was, what is the optimum number of warehouses required in India to serve all the customers? It was taking 3 days, 4 days, and to reach to the customers were dissatisfied because the warehouses were not optimally networked or where they should be placed to reach the customers faster. We did the optimization study that where are the customer base, where they are tagged, which state, what are the logistic infrastructure available to reach the customers, and then all using some of the statistical tools plus supply chain group, we are able to optimize and find out that 9 warehouses will serve us better in India instead of having 25 warehouses across. And 9 warehouses were strategically located across India. And as a result, we were able to save the cost. We were faster to reach to the customers.
So could you answer how much cost saving, how much faster time to delivery?
So we were able to save the cost of 3 crore rupees by having this restructuring of the locations.
In percentage terms?
In the percentage term, it was 8 to 9%.
So 10% reduction in cost and how much faster delivery?
And in terms of faster delivery, we were able to reduce the tag by 60%.
Now, when these two things happen together, I mean, they've saved on their cost, improved their turnaround time to the customer, the chances of the business getting a growth in the future also improve. So that's the intangible which he may not be able to quantify, but that's how things pan out.
Yeah. And then this was added to the inventory part also. So where the inventory should be stored, whether we store all the fast moving at one place, or whether we store all the product at all the 9 locations, what we decided. And the objective was to make sure that we have a very strong inventory optimization plan. And it was very clearly decided that where will be the central distribution center, where will be the satellite distribution centers, what kind of inventory will be keeping, where will be keeping A class, B class and C class inventories. And then
so basically a classification of the inventory and then deploying the hub and spoke model through.
Yeah. And then doing the detailed analysis on inventory. I mean, what is the health of the inventory? What is your inventory quality ratio, depot by depot?
Very important.
Yeah. And then how you are managing your customers after, I mean, given that your service level can't change or you need to achieve the service level designed by the organizations, how you reduce your inventory. And during COVID times also, I think most of the organizations really work on, rather than on inventory, they worked on routing lead times. What are the route lead times? What are the uncertainties involved? Getting the container from China is a probabilistic. What kind of lead time increasing or reducing? So instead of increasing the inventory, most of the organizations were focusing on various ways and means, having alternate vendors, alternate board of supplies, and then overall optimizing in overall inventory levels to of the organizations, and at the same time making sure that customers don't get impacted.
And what barriers did you face in this journey?
Yeah. And in terms of barrier faced overall digitalizations, I mean, first barrier was very clearly the change management. Whenever you are going to implement a new system, change management. I was talking about SAP Ariba. When we started implementation, there was internal resistance, there was external resistance from the vendors also. But once we are able to tell them very clearly what are the benefits it's going to bring, then the adoption rate got increased and it went up to 90-95%, where it was 40-45%. And then we were able to bring 80% of the vendors under SAP Ariba. And as the things moved, vendors also start seeing the advantage, and then they supported us on this entire journey.
Very nicely put, Rajesh, and that would take me to the next panelist, which is Setia, and I'm going to ask you as to what are the best practices per se in the supply chain that you want to share with this audience, and how do you go about implementing it? And also I would like to know your views on how important is upskilling or skilling of the people in this journey.
Okay, so I think while we may have discussed most of things in bits and pieces, I'd like to summarize that for us. Number one is the supply chain has to be customer-centric. So when we say customer-centric, do the things what the customer wants. Because eventually, we are doing everything in the service of the customer. If the customer stops buying, there is no requirement of the upstream supply chain. So hence, everything has to be done with customer in mind for us. So that becomes point number one as a practice, that it has to be customer-centric. Number two is it has to be agile, it has to be responsive to the changing environments which we currently see. We have seen, as we have seen, from 2-day delivery to a 1-day delivery to a 30-minute to a 10-minute delivery now. People are changing, people are adapting to this. So this responsiveness is definitely a key differentiator, and as Sanjeev rightly put it, during COVID, supply chain had been the key differentiator in terms of how the business was up and running and how soon that was up and running. Second. Third is, the end thing is technology, automation, digitization. That's the way forward for us. And hence, and that takes me to the next question with respect to what are the kind of skills which you need to get into the table. There's a lot of data which is available for us. We need to have the right analytics, right insights coming out of that data, so that we're able to take timely actions, which helps us in improving the overall business, not only the revenues, but the efficiencies as well. Number 4, as a best practice, definitely should be the collaboration. Everything you cannot do by yourself. So you need every part of the chain to work seamlessly for you, and hence this collaboration is very, very important. 5th is, I would say, bringing the right transparency, having the right nerve center, or the dashboards which kind of gives visibility to what's happening in the day-to-day business for us and how things have kind of evolved in the times for us. So this, I think, would be a summary from my side with respect to what are the best practices which should be there for us.
If someone was keeping a track of, very aptly put, Setia, in fact, if someone was keeping a track of the words that have got repeated multiple times, number 1 would be collaboration, transparency, data, analytics, and the other thing which is very, very important is upskilling of people. And what I mean by upskilling of people is, see, you will have a mix of people in a typical Indian company, or for that matter in MNC also. You will have data biscuits, the young generation who kind of comes in. You will have a lot of people, the older guys, who would have maybe a hitch to get into data, but they'll be very good at what actually data can do or what they can make out of that data. So you have to have a right mix of people. The young kids, the millennials are going to help you with data. If the top man or the top supply chain guy in the organization is data savvy, perfect, because then the synergies kind of evolve to a next level. But that generally may not be possible because the older generation is a bit shy of getting into too much of data. So what I feel is the young kids could kind of come in and do the algorithms, do the data management, share it with the seniors. So both of them have a role. I mean, it's going to be a synergistic approach wherein the older guys like us and others and the younger ones who kind of come in with a lot of energy and enthusiasm, they are the ones who kind of churn data, bring it to people like us. We kind of guide them. So it's going to be a synergy of something like when you go to a car rally, a rough terrain car rally, you have a driver and a co-driver. So the driver is going to be the young guy who kind of gets the energy going, and the co-driver is the guy who knows the terrain and kind of helps the driver to maneuver the terrain to the best possible extent. So that kind of synergy is what organizations should build in, and that I feel very passionately about this because we kind of keep on doing this. You have a lot of young blood coming into the organizations. You should not feel threatened with them. They are the ones who are going to support you, deliver the next level of outcome based on your data or your kind of experience. When you have 25, 30 years of experience, as most of my colleagues have, you know what leads to what. And the guy who gives you that information can help you decide easily as to what can lead to what. So that's the kind of synergy that we should build in organizations. Coming to my next co-panelist, I would like to ask you a
digital technologies, proliferation of tools which are essentially helping in building up, increasing visibility. In my sense, I think we really need to differentiate between doing digital and being digital. Right? One needs to clearly have an understanding of whether just because I've deployed a technology, I probably might in my own sense might say that I am embarking on a digital journey. It might not necessarily be true. We have seen how in the digital capability maturity models, even an IT backbone, and everyone is using enterprise resource platforms, right? We have proliferation of data, but then we have the upper layer and the middle layer, then are having a data analytics and an MI and an AL built onto it. But purely from a standpoint of what those technology adaptation, I think what has changed post-COVID is this, and if you have seen, these are large organizations who have gone into an integrated network enterprises maturity between themselves, and they have evolved, right? So necessarily, the more you are tightly integrated, the more fragile you become, and that also is what we're trying to address collectively as a panel today. How fragile you become, the more tightly you are, the more integrated you are, any weak link, any chain which breaks down, will probably also happen again. So what you need to do is you need to look at multi-functional enterprises solutions, where people, processes, technology are orchestrated in such a way that there is a synchronicity which comes out of your supply chain. Having said that, coming to the second part of the question, what is it? I think I landed up a little late, sir, so I kind of picked up on your thoughts on automation. I think that what has brought down another silent part which is brought down post-COVID is the human element. Which has become a very central thing. I mean, of course, supply chain has now got a voice both to the boardroom, but then the human element has also been brought in. So it's not necessarily about automation. It's what Toyota calls as an automation with a human element. So what is the advice jargon-free? I think organizations just really need to look at the predictive and the prescriptive side of what digital technologies they are looking at. If you have already identified a black hole, and you know that a particular A or a B technology can help me, increase my visibility, then probably that's the way to go for it. Increasing visibility necessarily does not integrate a multi-synchronicity for your supply chains. So 4 sets of
in order of priority of where the organizations are on the digital models. First one essentially is any tool, technology or adaptation of any processes which is on the digital aspect of it, is it reinforcing? Is it expanding? Is it generating value for the customers, or is it taking away? So that should be and when we say re-engineering, when we were in B schools, re-engineering, benchmarking were the buzzwords. I think what we really need to look at is reimagining the entire supply chain. So that's the first part. The second is around, I need to have my supply chain being a little resilient. But resiliency will come in whether I am able to understand the risk which my supply chain will have. Also look at anticipating those risks, and then probably building in a digital adaptation which essentially will answer me whether my risk mitigation is creating my resiliency or not. So that's another second aspect of it. Third of all is going to be around the people and the skilling part of it. Very, very critical. Like I borrowed it from Sir, I think human element in terms of automation, I think people will be the central part of it. Whether it's a young generation, sorry, I would like to excuse myself from the old batch. But I think the people skilling will really need to come out at the fore. And it's not about millennials or Zs or people who are traversing it. I think it's just about upskilling yourself, understanding what is the landscape, how is it changing. Organizations really need to invest and understand whether they can be scaled up or they can be differentiated and what to do. The fourth, which to the four pillars of digital journey, the fourth one is of course the focus on sustainability. The ESG standards and the sustainability component is going to get more vigorous as countries after countries are committing around the net zero emissions target. And please mark me out, and I'll be more than happy to engage maybe later into the future. The supply chain guys, all of us sitting here in this room are going to lead the sustainability initiative. No other corporate function will be in a situation to lead it. It's only going to be from the supply chain side of things. So from my view, these four elements, along with understanding the differentiation, whether you're just adopting a technology just because I'm a CPG giant, whether another CPG giant is doing it and I should just go out and deploy it, might not necessarily be true. So mapping, processes, synchronization, multi-orchestration, looking at your processes, skills, of course the fulcrum remains the customer or the customer's customer, but then that needs to clearly elaborated and mapped out.
So very nicely put. In fact, digitization just for the sake of digitization doesn't work. And the other point is, there could have been cheers from the audience because supply chain is now a boardroom discussion. I mean, it never used to be that higher up in the pecking order, but now it is actually governing the way companies behave and perform. So as we wind up the Q&A as far as the panelists is concerned, I'll just take a quick pointer from each one of them as to what their advice is to companies going forward in the supply chain. It could be anything. I mean, so starting with anyone who wants to kind of pitch in, what is the advice to all the audience and people who are going to be watching it over YouTube later on? So some advice to them. Starting with Rajesh.
Well, my advice on the supply chain, we talked about in the morning, it's a revenue generator now. Supply chain has become a competitive advantage, whether it's a medtech or pharmaceutical or so. The competition between the companies have moved to the supply chain competition. Supply chain owns 50 to 55% of the cost, the entire cost of goods sold, the entire distribution cost, the warehousing cost, till it reaches to the customer. Okay. So, as we focus more on digitalization, I mean, which will increase the speed, which will reduce our cost, and which will recognize so tomorrow the organization will start competing among themselves, how digitalized is the organization, and what are the benefits, what are the fruits organization is getting by implementing that journey. I have personally seen that the organization who are fast enough, who has implemented those processes fast, I mean, overcoming the internal change management challenges, overcoming the other challenges, they are able to move fast. They were closer to the customers, and customers will start giving the repeat order to the organization. Even if there is a delay, that means you are telling the customer well in advance. The consignment will get delayed by 1 month. You are giving the second promise to the customer, and customer will feel happy about it. Because customer doesn't also expect that they will get 100% service level. It could be 95% or 97% service level.
So Sanjeev, Suri goes next.
Thank you. I will not talk about supply chain because I think already a lot of overload of supply chain has happened. I will just say, I don't think anybody in this room is young or old. Okay. What I will say is we have young people and we have younger people. So why I'm saying this is we have to keep on learning. If we are learning and we have attitude learning, then we go on developing and we go on delivering. So that's something which I will say. And I will quote an example from what we have seen. There used to be a bin cards for the warehouses. So when I started my career, bin cards was the way forward and how you used to keep the inventory. And today there's no bin card, and today we have very technologies to do it. Same way there was for communication. I remember there was no computers and there used to be typewriter and type machines, and then fax machines came and they all have gone. So if they, I know the police who have not learned, they said, okay, what we'll do, we will maintain registers only and we'll do that. And they're the ones who could not go along and could not develop and could not grow. So please, for your growth, whatever you are doing it, please go on learning. So that's the only thing which I have.
Very nice.
Yeah, I think none of us to and none for us to advise. I think organizations really need to start looking inward, look at how their supply chains are doing it, look at and mitigate the challenges. The only, I would not necessarily wrap it up in terms of an advice, but it could be probably a caveat that the randomness and the velocity and vulnerability has actually altered the way the supply chains were structured. We are into a very different universe and a very different world now altogether. My supply chain, so there were initially examples, and we all know as practitioners, that supply chains were pretty much static. Something would have changed within that silos, or the functional integration would have happened, but my supply chain I could possibly see. If I'm coming from a manufacturing background, I can possibly see that. What's changing now is even my supply chain within my organization might change on a 6 monthly, half yearly, 1 yearly, 1.5 yearly or 2 yearly basis. Right? So I just cannot be sitting on my laurels and saying that, okay, here's my supply chain, these are my functions, these are my digital tools, this is my integration, these are my people, these are my skills. It might collapse one day, you will probably have to reinvent your supply chain also. So I think the organizations really need to be a little more cognizant of the fact of ensuring that they are continuously doing a stress test on the supply chains also, and be a little ahead of the curve in understanding that even my existing supply chain or what I probably am ahead for might also change 6 months down the line.
Just to add on what Sanjeev has mentioned, we talk about bin card. 20-25 years back we were using bin card. Now there is a drone technology. I mean, while we are having a leave holiday on Saturdays, Sundays, the drone counting the stocks in the warehouse, which is 35 feet high, 40 feet. So we reached from that level to this level because of all the digitized and raw materials.
Sanjeev said that.
So while everybody has spoken about, I leave just one thought with every one of you, and that's about data and analytics. So we have overload of data today, but how do we convert that into analytics and take draw actionable insights and take actions on them? I think that would be a key differentiator. And thank you.
Very nicely put. In fact, a big hand for all of these. In fact, the claps are going beyond what I expected them to be. Thanks for the appreciation. And now, before we proceed for lunch, I'd request, in case someone has few pointed questions for any one of us, you please raise your hand. The mic will come to you. You will have to introduce yourself and ask the question. If specifically to a panelist, please do that, because then we'll be able to answer it better.
Yeah, very good afternoon and very nice talk, and thanks for that. Myself, Dr. Rahul Sandhani from IIM Amritsar. I have one query. We are talking about the digitalization.
And the
right?
query is addressed to
anyone, no problem.
Then you are confusing us.
Nothing like that.
Okay.
Actually, I'm just worrying about one thing. Everyone is talking about the digitalization, whether we are thinking about the industry 4.0 or the supply chain management, right? can we see any dark side in the future? Is there any dark side you can see of the digitalization, like we are using artificial intelligence, virtual reality in everything? We are trying to incorporate in the every industry. So can we see any dark side for that in the coming future, in the, after 10 years or the 20 years?
I knew he was going to take it for sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. No, I would, there is a very interesting book by Paul Dorothy. It's called Human Plus Machine.
Yeah.
Right. Now, this is a question which I think has been going on since we were kids in Star Wars, having watching that, whether the technology advent will take over or pre-take over any of the supply chain activities. I think the human plus machine element will always be there. I think there will be certain, like we have seen rapid process automation. What Sanjeev mentioned, that we have a service provider who is tracking the customer calls, which is now CRM, initiatives where we are able to get a consumer insight both on terms of buying behavior pattern, what is the purchase element of it. Certain functions, yes, certainly will be completely and fully automated. But overall, broadly, purely from a supply chain functionality perspective. So a logistics process might get automated. A complete supply chain process will always certainly, at least even to the extent of virtual reality or in terms of whatever advance of technology aspects we are seeing, there will always be a human element inside of it. It could be probably on the decision side of it, the planning side of it, or even a control and a navigation side of it, or also ensuring that the benefits which are going to get accrued, despite all the automations and not getting into the details of it, will also try and impact by virtue of a human dimension to that. And it's a very good book. In fact, there are a lot of case studies involved with it. He's the CTO of Accenture Strategy, my very senior colleague globally, ex-senior colleague globally. So that book essentially tells you that this will the debate will linger on, but whether it will completely take over, I think probably not. I'll stick my neck out for that.
And Abhishek also mentioned about continuous evaluation of the supply chains. So that is what you need to keep on doing so as to make sure that you don't go wrong in the long term.
Yeah, perfectly fine. But if the intervention of the human is going to be reduced till 10%, then also it is going to be on the dark side, or is it okay with that? What is the perspective on that?
I will just to answer to you.
Can we offer him a chair on this? Because he's almost like a panelist.
No, nothing like that.
Okay. I will just say, I think it has been, this question has been on thought of for last many decades, where people say that will technology or automation take over. I think what is going to happen and what we have been seeing till now is that the profiles are changing, the job profiles are changing, but yes, the older abilities are closing down, but new ones are coming up. So I don't think that things are going to stop. There will be, people have to, one thing is very clear, that somebody says, okay, this is what I was doing, I want to do the same thing. No, it's not going to happen. Right. So you have to be ready to change, learn, and then I think that is, so whether we talk about drone technology, we talk about automated delivery, anything we talk about. So there will be new roles which will be coming up. So people are going to be relevant. Maybe we are talking about few centuries later, it's different, but today, yes, I see people need to upscale and develop, but roles are going to be.
Thank you so much.
Any more questions? Yeah. Kindly introduce yourself and, if possible, ask a point of question.
Yeah, I'm Narendra. I'm taking care of the regional distribution business for Volvo Eicher commercial vehicles. We come across one challenge which I don't know if we have discussed.
I hope it is not on account of our supplies to you.
No, it's not related to that. That is purely related to the data integration. I just want to ask this question to all the people sitting over here or from the panel side, that how we are going to get ready for the data safety part of it. When we go for a kind of end-to-end integration of the data, so it's the complete system of the data is getting very fragile, as sir was mentioning it, that our complete system will get fragile for a small safety related risk to the data. If I am linking my database, the complete order fulfillment process with the supplies, end-to-end integration with my suppliers or the vendors, and they are integrating their database with my database, and I am calculating what end-to-end supply chain lead time will be there to fulfill that order. So it is risking the complete data part of it. So that is very key aspects which everyone needs to understand before moving for the data, the intelligence part of it. If you are not addressing that part, your complete supply chain is getting at risk. So this is something which is a very key aspect when you are moving for the, the end-to-end intelligence part of it.
In fact, we should have made it a part of our panel discussion. Somehow we skipped it. Good that you pointed out.
I think you pointed out a very, very relevant issue which all companies face, and supply chain is really facing this. It's not only supply chain, I think there's all aspect of business which is important. That is the cyber security and the data security. So I think it's a high time for any of the companies, and I know my companies, we have a separate team at a global level, at a India level, which are focusing on it, different ways they are doing it. How do we control the data? How do we ensure that it's not leaking out, it's not going to wrong hands? But I think all the companies have to be one step ahead. I think the proper investment in the data security, in the cyber security, for all aspects of business, including supply chain, is really, really very important. And if it does not happen, we have seen, recently we heard about teams, the data hacking happened, and for a few weeks itself, they could not even work, they could not get the patients in. So that's the importance of data hacking which is happening. So I think this is really true. And the companies which are not investing in this side, I think they will really face difficult times as we go ahead.
So, of course, yes, I think cybersecurity is there, but purely from a supply chain perspective, and that's where I also highlighted when Mohit had asked me the first question around it is, what kind of risk mitigation, adaptation, and understanding of my risk strategies? Purely on the supply chain dimension part of it is what I'm taking up. Look, supply chain strategy is not only about having strategic sourcing, doing a lean manufacturing, being agile, looking at my warehousing, transportation to business, CMS systems. It is also getting up a little more and looking at what each of these functional aspects will probably have a risk element around it. And you need to continuously stress test it. You need not to wait for a black swan moment or a cybersecurity threat to hamper your supply chain. You need to continuously keep on doing simulations, right, in terms of if this scenario happens. So a complete, thorough risk amendment and a risk composite strategy purely from a supply chain, either hand-to-hand with your information technology is fine, or purely from a functional standpoint, both in terms of looking at alternatives also. Look, the cybersecurity threat is only about the data part of it, but data can also be static and dynamic. It's not something which is in your servers. It could be also loss of IP, loss of resources, loss of knowledge capital, disruption. It could be a physical loss also, right? So that entire composite nature will have to be built up into your risk strategy, and you really, really need to, have a complete 2 or 3 year, 4 years as a long-term view in terms of developing, and we keep on stress testing, keep on running simulations as you all supply chain guys keep on doing for each of our functions. So I think that's the way to go for it. I need to add that.
We are out of time, but we can take one last question, and the rest can be had over. Yeah, please.
Hi, so myself Kushal from Jazza India Supply Chain. It's a Foxconn Group company. My question to you, just for my understanding, the panel understanding over here. So how do you see the use of the tools for optimization in transportation, the transportation days? So for example, a route planning or a load optimization when you're loading vehicles. So how do you see this forecasting or optimization in this supply chain? And how well this will be adapted by the traditional companies?
I'll take part of this and then pass it
Sure.
on to Setia, because see, there's a tool called Solver. In case guys who have gone through MBAs in any of the institutes, they would have been taught something called a Solver, which is an operations research topic. So optimizing the transportation loads, optimizing the networks can easily be done through Solver, and it's actually a part of the Excel functionalities. So you could actually go to YouTube, learn how to use Solver to optimize this on a very, personal level, but in case you want to implement it across the organization, maybe we could hire some experts who are good at doing it. That's my take on it.
But there are many players in the market who are giving a ready solution for this. So this normally takes care of, it's an end-to-end system, so which takes care of your entire freight procurement, which you talked about, the intending process, the planning process in terms of how you stuff your containers, which ensures that you're not leaving any possible space, which optimizes the cost for you in terms of the transportation. And it also takes into consideration your delivery timelines, the constraints at the customer's end with respect to what time he accepts the deliveries or what size of vehicle which can go to that particular customer. So you have ready solutions already available. I can help you with some over the lunch on this.
That's fine, but my next question will be the adaptation of these tools in this industry. Where are we right now in this adaptation? So everybody wants to fill the inventory till the brim of the vehicles, right? And underutilize the vehicle or overutilize this, right? Overloading gets charged. Then where are we right now on the adaptation of these things?
So I think it's a journey, I would say. People have embarked on this journey. If you ask me, my offhand experience would be roughly about 30 to 40% of the organization, they already have some kind of solution around this. Balance others, they are actively thinking about doing this because this is directly impacting their cost to serve us.
So I think with that, it's a wrap as far as this discussion is concerned. We'll be more than happy to take your questions offline. And as we wrap it up, I'd like to thank the whole of Celerity team and Chalukota Bansal for having us all together. And thank you for being a very, very patient and a learned kind of audience. Thank you so much. Thank you.